All right, so we have time for some questions and answers. So John Noderf is going to be on the microphone. Do we have another person running the microphone? Okay.
Hi there, Kerry Brown with Spark of Freedom Foundation with James Taylor and Lee Mueller. Question for Mr. Milloy. Junk science. We had a good talk about alternative fuels next door. What do you think about the 10% ethanol mandate? Can we kind of make that a poster child? Isn't that one that most consumers say, hey, you know, that's one that's making my gas expensive, and we know it's hurting poor people and crops, et cetera. I think it's a great poster child target. What do you think?
Well, yeah, look, I think we have, it's not 1970 anymore. The skies are a lot cleaner than they were. I don't think the ethanol mandate is achieving anything right now, except, I mean, it's there because of the politics of becoming president or whatever. And I know that it does make, the whole notion of these, we have these boutique fuels. Every part of the country has to have a special blend of fuel because of EPA. I mean, I think a lot of it is ridiculous. That said, it would be nice to get rid of that, but I don't think it's really a top priority right now. I mean, if the worst thing we do is subsidize farmers, okay. I mean, I'm not for that, but it's not the worst thing we do. I mean, we have Myron laid out an agenda. Right at this point, they're only going to do so many things on the environment. We've really got to kind of narrow our focus and get those things accomplished right now. But I mean, I agree with you. I mean, in a perfect world, we wouldn't have any of this. We don't need it. It's not cleaning the air. It's fouling our engines. It's a lose, lose, lose. But there are a lot of other things that are worse.
Could I comment on that? Look, the renewable fuel standard is collapsing because the schedule that Congress set out is unachievable. So we're close to the level for corn, which is 15 billion gallons, but the remaining 22 billion gallons is miracle fuel, and which only exists in people's imagination. So what needs to be done, and I think the House Energy and Commerce Committee has said this, we need to reform the program. Now, I want to reform the program, and I think we all do, by eliminating it, but that isn't what Congress is going to do. But they need to reform it to get rid of this schedule of every year we have, refiners have to buy several billion more gallons of miracle fuel, which doesn't exist. So, I think there are chances to reform it. I think it has to be reformed because it's collapsing. The question is, how good will the reform be? Will we end up with something worse, which is the way Congress typically reforms things, or will we end up with something that's smaller and less costly to consumers? So let's fight this. But this is not going to be an administration thing. This is going to be a Congress thing.
Right, and just Myron made this mention magical fuel. What we're talking about there is ethanol from, like George Bush made this, switchgrass. We're not talking about corn ethanol. I mean, we need to get rid of that, but cellulosic ethanol is the miracle fuel, which we have spent, countless billions of dollars trying to develop. It's, the technology is just not ready for prime time, and we need to get off that schedule.
So I'm from Montreal in Canada. I'm Roy Epen. Mr. Trump has already sort of made Canada a little greater by passing Keystone Pipeline, so I thank him for that. My question is, many of the states and provinces in Canada have agreements with cap and trade and things like that. How can Mr. Trump do anything about those kind of things? Can he make them less profitable for those states? Well, they're not profitable to begin with, but...
Look, the whole purpose of the Obama administration was to turn the American economy, all of the Heartland states, to turn them into California and New York. And if you think that, like, Southern Illinois is a great place to create a film industry, or Indiana's going to have Silicon Valley, or we can create a lot of more lawyers in Kansas and Tennessee. Well, okay, but the Heartland states elected Trump and they repudiated that vision. They don't want to become like California, which in fact is an economic basket case. It is totally insolvent. All the middle class people are fleeing. You've got a bunch of wealthy people, you've got a bunch of poor people, and in the Central Valley you're approaching third world standards now. So the question is, can we stop California and Red G up in the Northeast from having these cap and trade agreements? No, I don't think so. But the fact is that we believe in federalism. If California wants to sink into the Pacific Ocean, I love California. I love Californians. It's the greatest place in the world, but politically they've wrecked it. So if they want to sink into the ocean, that's their right. And if they want to do it in cooperation with British Columbia and Ontario, that's going to happen. I just think we're going to have two economies here in a few years. They're going to be very different. And we'll see who has a better model. And I think that's the great value of federalism, is we can see who's doing better and who's doing worse.
Hi, I'm Dave Burton with the sealevel.info website. And Steve, you mentioned a specific swamp drainage project. And in particular, the National Climate Assessments. They're currently working on the fourth one. Right. And a few days ago, I attended the Southeast Regional Workshop as part of that program. And I can tell you that there's nobody like the folks in this room that were in that room except for me. And they have currently, as part of that process, they are soliciting expert reviewers, and they promised me that it would be not the farce that the IPCC's expert review process is. And so I'm planning to sign up or throw my name in the hat as an expert reviewer. And I guess my question really is not specifically for you, Steve, but for everybody in the room. Could I see a show of hands of those who would consider throwing their hats in the ring to be an expert reviewer on that National Climate Assessment, and see if we can get a little, we may not get it killed this time, but maybe we can get it fixed a little bit. Can I see a show of hands?
Joe, are you sending me? Hello, I'm Joanne Theon. My husband is John Theon, a retired NASA scientist. Thank you. And my question is for Mr. Milloy. I'm just wondering if you might revise your talk a little bit about NASA scientists. Mm-hmm. My husband served as a climate scientist with NASA from 1962 to 1995 and did some, what I think is really pretty important research. He was involved in climate research to help us understand more about the climate, and this was really before climate change began, before the topic really hit the fan, so to speak. Right. And he was involved in some groundbreaking research regarding rainfall and climate studies, and I believe it makes me very sad, and I'm sure I can speak for John as well, that the climate science has been hijacked by people like James Hansen and Gavin Schmidt.
Well, I think we should give your husband a round of applause for all his great work. And look, there are a lot of good people, especially in the past. We're not really talking about the past, we're talking about the present. And even today, there probably are a lot of good people in these agencies. But the weight of the agency is in the realm of junk science, and so good people are silenced. This happens every day. Myron and I know a lot of these people. If they speak up, they get cut out. They lose their jobs. They can't do work. They get swept up into this current of the politicization of science. And in a perfect world where science is not politicized, maybe the government could fund some of this stuff. But we've seen that it's just an area ripe for abuse. I mean, it was bad before Obama came in, and then Obama just put it on steroids. And it has seriously destroyed the lives of many people. Go into coal country, go into these coal communities. You'll see people. There's nothing else to do there. They can make a good living turning this black stuff in the ground that has no other value. We can turn it into energy and create a lot of wealth for a lot of people, including the areas of Appalachia. But the Obama administration perverted science and destroyed these people. There's nothing left to do. And so, you know, we've got to keep our focus on the big picture, which is, you know, science has been abused by the government. Maybe, you know, in the beginning it wasn't, but now it is. So we've got to fix that. But I honor people like your husband. I know many great government scientists of the past and present, but, you know, there's this larger, you know, elephant in the room that we've got to deal with.
Yes, keying off something you said, Myron, as far as getting active into the new world. My name is Steve Hines. One of the things I think that Steve and EE Legal Institute did was discredit the indirect health benefits by accessing over 100 and some pages of dialogue between the universities, the studies, and the EPA. So they got exactly the study they wanted. My question to you guys, how can we go forward unless we start discrediting a lot of the work that has been done over the last decade? And which comes back to what I was saying to you the other day, Steve, or yesterday, that it seems to me that having access to that information, the communication between the agencies and the White House over the last 8 years is the best way to get everybody's attention, politically speaking.
Well, look, it's very difficult to do if you read my book, which is free and everybody. So,
Yes.
so I'm not promoting it because you already got it free, right? So there's a story of how, you know, Lamar Smith talked yesterday about secret science. So, I came up with a way around the secret science, and it was to create new data from California. And I had then real professional scientists do the analysis, and it showed that, of course, particulate matter is not associated with death. Then we tried to get it published, and we sent it to, the first journal we sent it to, we got the answer back in a week, and the answer was, EPA decided 20 years ago that particulate matter kills people. We're not interested in this. I mean, this is how science works in America today, okay? And so science doesn't work, really. We've seen what happened with Willie Sue and Lord Monckton. These guys have a hard time getting published in the big journals. I mean, they just won't even take their papers. Fred Singer knows about this quite well. We need to blow up the entire scientific establishment because, and there I go using that word, it's not scientific anymore. It's just, it's political in nature. We're not learning anything. These people are not benefiting science or the public. They expect huge amounts of money. It affects the political process, and everybody in this room has got to get on this.
Could I add to that? You're right that the revelations from emails and documents released is a critical part of our effort to discredit what's been done. The misuse of science at EPA and at NOAA and so on. Now, my colleague, I think many of you know him, Chris Horner, who works also, he's at CEI, but he also works for E&E Legal. He filed the first FOIA request for CEI in 1999, and we have been doing that ever since. And in 2001, we were the first organization to file suit under the Information Quality Act against the first national assessment. So we have a lot of experience in this, and as you know, CEI and E&E Legal have found a lot of things out through the FOIAs, but typically, you know, we have a 100-year schedule of release of Lisa Jackson's emails. The court thought it was reasonable to give EPA 100 years to release several hundred a month over 100 years. And so that's what we're up against. But I would say this, we now have an opportunity with new people in place to renew those requests and try to get this information out to the public in a way that can be a lot more useful than a lot of the emails that we've gotten over the years, which are, you know, here's the page and you get the subject line and who it's from, and then the rest is all blacked out. We have thousands of those. It's amazing how you know, effective their magic markers are. So I think now we have an opportunity, and people should be thinking about how to go back and get some of this information. And many of you have FOIA capability. You know how to do it, so you should be thinking about doing it. And with new people in place, they may actually fulfill the requests as they are required to under law. And finally, you ought to think about using the Information Quality Act, which was passed in 1999 and has been a dead letter during the Obama administration. But if you see junk science being promoted or disseminated by the federal government, you can file a petition, an information correction request. You can actually request them to fix it, but you have to point out why it's wrong. So this is a huge opportunity for people to reform the way the federal government disseminates and uses information.
All right, that's all the time we have for questions. It's noon, so we're going to be back in this room. Hold on, I'm going to make you guys clap again. Don't you worry. I just wanted to say this before everyone starts clapping and talking and getting up and leaving. So we are going to have the break from noon to 12:30. Then we're going to have our keynotes. We'll have Becky Norton-Dunlap and Will Happer, who will be giving the keynote for lunch. So take all of your stuff with you because they need to turn the room over. And it's just way easier if you guys don't have books and stuff on the tables there. Now let's give them a big round of applause and stand up because we're going to do it anyway.